So if you've ever played with another guitar player or played in a band with two guitars, then you know how important it is to find your own space in the mix, to find parts that complement the other musicians and contribute to the song without getting in the way. Today we're going to look to the great guitarists of Motown for some inspiration in this, and we'll cover a few tricks and tips to help you lay down solid rhythm guitar parts. So for this lesson, we're going to play along to a little song that I wrote specifically for these examples. And this backing track, along with all the tabs and notation for the examples in this lesson, will be available over on my Patreon site. Now, when you're coming up with guitar parts, you want to think like an arranger. And there's two key things to focus on here. Rhythm, meaning how your parts interlock rhythmically and play off of one another, and frequency. You don't want your parts fighting for the same frequency range in the mix. And to accomplish these two things, we can actually look to the drummer and bass player for some inspiration. So for this first part, we're going to look to the drummer for some inspiration. And rhythmically, what we're going to do is play accents on the backbeat, beats 2 and 4 of the measure. And frequency-wise, this is going to be our high parts. So we're going to play these accents on the top 3 strings. And for this, we're going to use some simple triad shapes. Now, the first 3 chords of this progression are B major, C sharp minor, and G sharp minor. And so we can play these simple triad groupings on the top 3 strings in 3 different positions. First up, we've got B major right here, C sharp minor right here, and G sharp minor right here. Then we can move up through the positions to B major here, C sharp minor here, and G sharp minor here. And then finally, B major here, C sharp minor here, and G sharp minor here. So we've got 3 different spots we can play these backbeat accents. And now when I'm doing this style of rhythm part, I like to keep things very muted and staccato. Try to keep the accents in line with the snare drum, that kind of sharp attack. So. Right, so I'm not letting those chords ring out long. It's not a long ringing thing, right? And one of the things that I'll add to this before I hit these accents is to do a little arpeggio of the chord, just playing through the notes of that triad with sort of a muted staccato sound. So for this, I'm going to mute with the palm of my hand and do a... Then I can move this through all the different positions. Right, so here's what this backbeat accent part sounds like along to the backing track. All right, so next up, we're going to complement our high part with a low part. And for this, we're going to look to the bass player for some inspiration. In fact, this part is going to double the bass line, which is a really common thing you hear on a lot of old Motown and Stax records. So this tune is mostly in the key of B major. So most of the notes we're going to be pulling from here come from the B major scale. And all we're going to do is really target the root note of each chord as it changes, and then use notes from the scale to melodically tie things together. And again, I'm keeping sort of a muted feel with my right hand. I'm muting the strings to keep things sort of tight and staccato, and then letting the notes that I want to ring out, those root notes on the downbeat, letting those ring out. I'm also going to switch to a brighter sound for this part. Since we're playing a lower part, I don't want the guitar part to sort of get muddied up with the bass part. I want it to have definition and stand out. And when you start layering these parts together, again, it's important that everything has its own place in the mix frequency-wise. So here's what this doubled bass line sounds like along with the backing track. And I'll keep that high part we played earlier in there so you can hear how the two parts play off one another. So for this third and final part, we're going to find something that fits neatly in between our high and low parts, something to tie everything together. And this is where we can start to have some fun adding some fills and embellishments. But it's really important that we don't step on the melody of the tune. We want to stay out of the way of the lead vocal or the soloist. But we can have some fun here and start to get creative. And one of the things I like to use for these types of parts is double stops. We can use things like thirds, sixths, and fourths, which I like to slide around. And we can tie all these things together. We can also use our triad shapes, as well as single note lines from the B major scale. We can tie all these things together. So now I'm going to play through the tune again. I'm going to keep our high part, I'm going to keep our low part, and I'm going to add a third part that sort of ties things together. And again, all the tabs for these different parts are going to be available up on the Patreon site. So you can learn all these things and stack them up on your own. And of course, you can have fun and get creative and come up with parts similar to this of your own. All right, guys, so I really encourage you to experiment with this on your own. Once again, this backing track is going to be available over on my Patreon site, so you can experiment with coming up with your own parts. I'm going to put it up there with none of the guitars on there, so you can experiment with stacking your own parts. There's really so many creative possibilities with these types of things. You can move things around. You could play your accents in a lower register and play your fills in an upper register. Really, the sky's the limit when you start combining these different ideas and different tools together. So I encourage you to have some fun and experiment with that, and even write some tunes and parts of your own. So until next time, happy practicing and take care.